It's Wednesday, January 25th, 2023, 6 p.m. This Board of Commissioners workshop is called to order. City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Mayor Hendricks,
Here.
Vice Mayor Andrews.
Here.
Commissioner Taglerini,
Here.
Commissioner Kerr,
Here.
Commissioner Hudson,
Here.
all are present.
First on the agenda tonight is public comment. If you have any public comment on anything that is not on tonight's agenda, please step to the podium, state your name and address. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Good evening, Chuck Dillon, 529 Lillian Drive. Something that you guys had proposed and it became public was the vote and changing the numbers of different things so that there could be more participation in the government. Something that I had come up with is, why do we have districts? The last 4 years, there's been no voting on districts 3 and 4. And the participation that you would try to get before was by lowering the number of signatures that would needed and lowering the years that you had to live in the district. I don't understand why of a town that's less than 4,000 people, it used to be 4,000, but the census is now 3,880. And we have very small turnouts. But if you want to get more people involved with the different areas, why do we have districts? I talked to various people about, they say that there's a concern about, well, somebody in District 1 is going to protect their area, but District 2, I mean, I'm sorry, like when Ray and I were together, why, I could look out for District 4 or 3 or 1 just as well as anybody else. There's 2 ways of possibly putting this out to the public. You guys can either put it on an ordinance and it gets put out to the public, or goes around and gets 10% of the signatures. So I could go out and try to get 10% of the people to say, let's, do away with this. I'm not looking to do away with the commissions. I think we definitely need to have 4 residents and the mayor. Absolutely. But why is it confined to where you live in the district? And as an example, a year ago, Ray and I, there was 982 people voted. There was 1,013 that voted in Taglerini's district. So I don't understand why it has to be districts. I understand the basic concept used to be, okay, so if you lived in an area, you would go to that commissioner. That's not really true anymore. If there's issues going on, Doug is not in my area, but I see him on the beach all the time. If I have a problem, I talk to Doug. I know David personally. If I have a problem there, I'll talk to him. John, I also know you. So I would talk to anybody that is involved with a particular situation, not necessarily my commissioner, which is Ray. And just like I said, it's just something that I'm bringing up, and it could be very valid. So like as the example like this, maybe I could have run for District 3 or 4 or that area to be one of the people on the commission. Just food for thought, and something that I think could be, it'd be a very good time to see about having the people's input. And if it is something to be considered, then it goes on the ballot. Just food for thought. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask Chuck a question just for clarification?
Sure.
Chuck, so are you suggesting that all 4 commissioners would be like at large, like the mayor is? So they could represent the whole island, but not assigned to a district? Or you're still saying there should be District 1, 2, 3, and 4, but they could be from any district?
Well, I haven't really gotten into this too deeply because as to whether or not it's going down a lost hole, but there still should be 4 representatives of the people and the mayor. and be it, okay, so like this year, there's 2 new representatives. Okay, so there'll be 2 open spots. In the following year, there'd be 2 other spots.
Okay, I just wanted to get clarification on that. Thank you.
Well, and like I say, I mean, I didn't really get too deep into it, but it's just food for thought to get things going, to get more people involved in our community, which is very poor.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, next is City Manager's Monthly Report, December 2022. Mr. Gomez.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. December 2022, we ended our year. Of course, lots of events, celebrations for the holidays, for the new year, decorations all throughout the city. Appreciate everybody who volunteered at the events, and lots from the festival, from the Merry Market held here to the boat parade, a Festival of Lights boat parade, tree lightings, etc. It was a very, very festive month. We also opened our city store here at City Hall on the 2nd floor. Lots of opportunities to acquire some items to show your City of Madeira Beach pride, and really just kind of more marketing and advertising of the City of Madeira Beach. We also began we began the process at the end of the month for our new recycling vendor, Waste Pro. The majority of the previous 18-gallon containers were collected and the new 64-gallon recycling containers were delivered. We've had pretty good success through January, again, reminding folks of the proper way to recycle. We've had a few instances of recycling ending up on the street and different examples like that. So we've addressed those with the vendor and making sure that those don't happen again, but hopefully encouraging people to recycle. And we will provide an update next month as to the first the first month's activity with that. Also a reminder of the election coming up on March the 14th. We have 1 seat, the mayoral seat. Just reminding folks also of help us keep the city as clean as possible and make sure the trash ends up in recyclable and proper receptacles, and keep the beach as clean as it possibly can be, as well as the rest of the city. Our the Madeira Way Market continued every Wednesday. Really saw an increase in foot traffic and folks buying lots of items at the market and different food vendors that show up. We also began issuing the resident parking permits, for all residents in Madeira Beach. I believe through today, we're up to over 1,000 permits that have been issued, limit of 3 per household, and they do need to bring in your vehicle registration card and a driver's license in order to issue those. Lots of provided updates on projects that are still, quite a few are still in the planning phase, but we keep providing updates every month. Really no significant changes. A lot of them are in the design phase. There will be an update later in this meeting on the dredging. Again, we advertise a lot of the events, reminding folks of upcoming activities and how to reach out to us for any issues. Updates from our various departments, from building and marina. We're still quite busy with lots of permits being issued in our building department. The marina had kind of a little bit of a slower month, which December tends to be due to just different changing weather conditions. Our parking operation, just an update. We have, through the first year, we collected out of the additional 50 cents per hour that the council adopted last year. We are currently sitting, or at the end of December, at $487,835.75 for the building a new parking garage. So, and obviously that continues as we move forward. And we continued issuing violations for folks that did not pay to park, and our parking collections are still fairly healthy, although a little bit of a decline in this past December compared to the December of 2021, but not significantly. It was the first month in a while that was actually less in parking revenue for the entire month than the same month the year before. So kind of interesting that saw a little bit of that decline. And just listing further, a lot of data on some of the other items, again, the recycling reminders, and really just the last part is as we move into 2023, again, we will begin to see some construction and eventually, hopefully the groins, eventually the dredging, and eventually some road work, road resurfacing projects. So there will be some traffic and maintenance of traffic changes in certain areas, given the construction that's happening. We've reached out to DOT for some enhancements along 150th and even Gulf Boulevard, and we're hoping that some of those are implemented throughout this year, such as like no right on reds in a few intersections, as well as getting not aquifer, but the water that's bubbling up on Gulf Boulevard in front of the old Bank of America building. So that's just a very quick overview. A few events coming up. Well, we're kind of toward the end of our month, but we had a very successful seafood festival earlier this month, and then a few events coming up, like the final Friday, this Friday, and then Saturday's the breakfast with the city manager at the Snack Shack over at Archibald Park. So be happy to answer any questions you might have.
None for me. I think we're good. Thank you very much, Mr. Gomez. Okay, next items for discussion. And I'm wondering, as I look at this, I see item J, discussion on ordinance 2023-11. Since Jerry's here, I wonder if we should move that up to first thing so that if Jerry has some other things he needs to do, maybe
Good by me.
knock that out of the way, if that's all right with everyone else. Okay,
Yeah, come on. Come on up.
we'll try to get you home in time for dinner, Jerry.
What page does that start on?
173.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate that. For the record, Jerry Murphy, University of Florida, planning consultant to the city. What you have before you for the workshop is the evaluation and appraisal of the comprehensive plan. The statutes require you to do that every 7 years. I believe it's due in May. And so we have just enough time for the workshop and 2 public hearings to get that to the state. After your first public hearing, it will be transmitted to the state and also to Pinellas County. And then they have a 30 to 60 day period that they review it. I think the county's got a little more time than the state for some reason. And then that will come back to you with any objections, recommendations, or comments the state or any of the state agencies have. We hope there won't be too many. And you'll then have a second public hearing at which you will adopt it. So I'm here today to answer any questions you might have, and I can give you as in-depth of a coverage of this as you like. Many of you who are on the commission have seen most of this stuff except for the language cleanup that we did when we adjusted the level of service standards to make the way for the proportionate share development fees. So much of this was done in the last couple of years. We've just now done all of the elements because we didn't touch each one of them during that time.
Okay, and from what I can see, a lot of this is language cleanup.
Yes, sir. And that was instruction that we got several years ago in terms of as we go through these things, let's try and make the language a little more accessible to the public, a little less convoluted, and that's what we've done. We also eliminated a couple redundant policies. There are policies that say the same thing or say part of something, and then another policy says that and additional stuff. So we just struck those out. There's about maybe 4 of those, and those are noted in brackets following those various sections. The biggest change is that the data and analysis has been updated to the 21st century.
Okay.
That data and analysis dated back to 1990s. And so it needed to be updated. Not a lot has changed. Unlike most areas in Florida, your population has decreased slightly. And I think that has a lot to do with the way the census counts population. You know, you've got a sort of a change in the way residences are being occupied. And so people who fill out the census have different answers than they probably did 20 years ago.
So I have no questions. I know we've,
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
yes, please.
Jerry, the only question I have is besides the language cleanup, is there anything fundamentally different than what we approved a year ago?
No, sir. Just the data and analysis, which you don't actually adopt.
Yeah, I read through it and I was just trying to, I was trying to figure out why it was back on, but I knew we had to reapprove it and clean up the language on it. So good by me. Thanks, man.
Yes, sir. I will let you know that your local planning agency spent, I think, 5 of their meetings and had a special meeting doing 2 elements at a time, and they did a very thorough review of it. And so I think that, you know, they've made a recommendation for you to move it forward up the process.
Jerry, there's a couple of places we talk about the reason of losing population.
Yes.
So on page like 279, the second paragraph, we're kind of saying reduction in density is due in part to the establishment and enforcement of the county coastal construction control line and enforcement of comprehensive plan density. Linda's, one of the meetings said, it seems like, you know, as elderly residents pass away and their kids take control, they may not come down here. And so they lose, the homestead disappears from those properties. And then as other people are preferring to be able to rent the places, then short-term rentals or something like that, instead of keeping it as a homestead. Is that the reason, or?
I would say that's
come
part of
from?
it. And I think that's statewide that's happening. You're seeing what I would call a commercialization of residential properties. You know, whether they're allowed to do it or not, folks are doing that. And so you may recall that there is an ongoing battle with the legislature. Every year, the legislature tries to do something with regard to short-term rentals to make it harder for local governments to regulate them. And, you know, it goes back and forth. So far, nothing much has happened. If you have regulations in place, I believe the current standard is you can have them. They're kind of grandfathered in. But if you don't have them in place, then the legislature doesn't allow them to be regulated to some extent. You have regulations in place, but you also have a commercialization trend.
And council or mayor and commission, excuse me, if you recall, we've provided you a spreadsheet, a table showing all of the parcels in our city that we received from the property appraiser, commercial, residential, industrial, and it's been 80% residential, 20% everything else. However, and our largest housing stock are condos. And it was well over 50% of all of our units in our city. However, just as Mr. Murphy said, they've become commercialized. The property appraiser lists them as residential, and so people are living in there, but not year round or half of the year or 8 months. They've become the rentals. So they're still classified as residential, but when they lose the homestead, obviously it just, the property is now changed. It has become commercial. So that slide of 80-20 is a little bit skewed, and it's becoming more commercial versus residential, even though the condos are technically still residential. But again, they're a business, and they're no longer homesteaded.
Yeah, that's actually driving up real estate costs too, because people are paying more for a property that they can rent out than they would normally pay. I've seen that.
Another trend is that people are using Airbnb, and so they're not renting them out all the time. So your rental true rental properties are not going away. They're more for holidays and things like that. So it's part of the housing crisis that we're having in the nation
Yeah, that's
and
always,
in Florida.
yeah, it's always a big discussion at Big C meetings. So,
So we send this into the state and the county.
The
And
area that you're looking at or we're looking at, that's data and analysis.
Mhm.
We won't transmit that to the state. That's
Okay.
strictly your gathering of information here on the ground that you use to inform the policies in the comprehensive plan. And like we say, it needed to be updated because it's 20, 30 years old, but not a lot has changed. Madeira Beach is basically built out, at least horizontally. You're going to see small things go down and bigger things go up.
Mayor. Jerry, on the table of contents, 15.0 property rights element, page 77, maybe I'm overlooking it. I don't see it in the paragraph form. Is there any changes there? Or
No,
is there
sir.
Anything?
You just adopted that a little while ago, and
Okay.
it basically tracks the statutory language. That's one of the things that you have to do as part of your EAR, but you did it before because I think you had a comp plan amendment that was pending and it couldn't go forward until you adopted that. That was one of the state's requirements.
Just making sure I'm not missing something. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I have nothing else. Anything else?
Just-
Is there any public comment on this? Okay. Thank you, Jerry.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Andrew, did you have anything you wanted to give us any input on before we move forward?
I'm okay. We updated the data analysis and the only things that have really changed is like the average rent here has gone up a lot since like the 2000 census, and the housing stock is slowly becoming newer here, but still a lot of the housing is pre-1980. Other than that, I don't have anything else to really say that Jerry hasn't said.
Okay, thank you. Next is fiscal year 2023 budget amendment number 1. Mr. Laughlin.
Sure, thank you. So let me give you some background understanding of the budgeting process as a whole, and then that can kind of explain as to why this is coming before you. So when the city goes through its annual budgeting process, that generally happens around the spring timeframe, gets close to finalized around the summer, and at that point, we started scheduling budget workshops with you all. And then we finalize it over the summer months for final presentation in September, adopt by 10/1. So when departments go through that process in the spring, they're thinking, okay, what are our capital projects that we're going to be undertaking in the following fiscal year? They don't think about necessarily as much the projects that were budgeted in fiscal year 22 that they expected to complete in 22. If they know at the time they're going, as they go through inputting their budget numbers, hey, here's a project that we're definitely not going to get done for X, Y, and Z reasons. So let me go ahead and budget it for 23. But things do happen where they do anticipate a project will be completed, or they'll receive a truck or something will be completed and the expense incurred in FY 22 that for whatever reason, it just doesn't happen. And especially in FY 22 was, supply shortage issues, labor issues. We had contractors that just couldn't get projects started or completed, vendors that couldn't supply a truck in time, that things got pushed back. So what happens is we then need to amend the FY 23 budget to account for those 2022 expenditures that you had approved in the 2022 budget, that we just never got around to spending in FY 2022. And we didn't include in the 23 budget because when we went through that process, we anticipated those expenditures would be completed in FY 22. Because when we go through the budgeting process, we don't just automatically roll all POs, all purchase orders, or commitments that we make into the next year. What we do is we zero those out and we kind of start fresh. And so what happens then is we look at any of those purchase commitments that we made in 22 that weren't expended and say to each other, hey, did we not budget for this in 23, but we're going to incur it in 23? And if so, we need to do a budget amendment to increase our FY 23 budget for those unplanned expenditures. So that's what the very vast majority of these items are. And I've itemized that in the schedule that I provided you and with hopefully sufficient explanation as to when each one was, but that's generally the gist of it. So for example, a fire truck or additional equipment for a fire truck, a digital board or field improvements and recreation, all things that maybe Jay budgeted in FY 22. We presented to you all in FY 22 budget. You all approved it. But lo and behold, we were expecting it was going to come in September and it just didn't until November. So we incurred that expense in November, but didn't budget for it in 23. So that's what we're amending here. And just, so you don't get concerned as, oh my God, now we're just increasing our FY 23 budget immensely. We were pretty grossly under budget in FY 22. So just from the initial figures that we have from year end for the fiscal year ended September 30, 2022, we were about 4.3 million shy. Our actual expenditures were about 4.3 million shy of what we budgeted. A lot of that is like in the stormwater fund where we had about $2 million for drainage and stormwater improvements for those Area 3, Area 5 stormwater project that didn't come to fruition as we anticipated in 22. So we're moving that to 23. So nothing in here I don't see as concerning or we're throwing something at you that it never came to you before. But I just wanted to kind of set the stage as to why this is coming to you, as these kind of things do happen in the budgeting process where we just think something's going to get done in the year that we budget for it and it doesn't happen. And then we roll that into the 23 budget. And that's why we need to bring that amendment here before you. But I'm happy to go through any questions you have on any of those individual line items. We can go through any ones that you have additional questions on. Plus the applicable department heads are here as well to answer any questions you have. But overall, that's the intent behind this this amendment.
The only question I have is really, can you make this print a little smaller?
Well, if there weren't so darn many,
Maybe we can change the format on that.
we can work on it. I mean, I
page.
did landscape it, so it's wider instead of longer, but
Yeah,
we can try to include less on each page and blow up that font going forward. And this is just the workshop, so when we do put it to resolution, if you all are accepting of it, I can try to work on that.
okay, thank you. That's all I've got. I know we go through this every year. There's always a carryover of projects that didn't get done, so it's
Right.
kind of SOP.
Yep, standard fare.
Anyone have any questions?
None here.
No, that was a great intro to what you're doing here, because that's the first thing I was going to ask about was a non-departmental and the actual balance being 5 million, 4.5 million versus 9 million, the amended budget. So that clears that up perfectly. Nothing jumps out at me, so.
All right,
Appreciate
so
it.
we'll carry that on through. Any public comment on this? Having none, we'll move on to discussion of state lobbying services. Mr. Gomez?
Thank you, Mayor. This item is, I think, to discuss how to proceed with a lobbying firm and to lobby the state of Florida, the legislature, the executive branch, for various legislative items and or funding for specific projects. The city has been using a firm, Schumacher Advisors, for several years. And we have had some pretty good success. I can obviously speak for the prior year as we did receive the 2 appropriations for the dredging of Johns Pass, 1.556 million, and a little over $1 million for road resurfacing projects. Schumacher had obviously quite a bit of work, and they spent many hours and discussing with our legislative delegation as well as at the budget time, committee meetings and answering questions, providing data as part of that process. We are intending to continue to use Schumacher. I mean, we're very content with their work, had a lot of success. And so this item is really to explain that, but also to ask if there's anything else that the commission would like to see. Is there a desire to continue with the lobbying services? My recommendation is to continue with that. However, we do need, if that is the direction that the commission would like to go, I would need to bring this item back to you to approve a professional services agreement. And a copy of the agreement is enclosed. I'll get a better copy than the scanned version on there, but it is an agreement to provide lists, essentially again, lobbying services to the executive legislative branches. The costs are listed up there at $4,500 a month, plus up to $250 essentially for incidentals. So we would bring that item back to you for approval at the February 8th regular commission meeting. Be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Gomez, you and I discussed this, and I know that you're pleased with them. Does this compensation of these expenses, is this a raise or is this any increase or is it the same as we've been paying them? Paying that?
My apologies. I'm trying to remember and I don't recall I think there was a slight increase in 22 from 21.
Okay,
I think we were paying 4,200. I will confirm and provide that to you,
Fine.
but there is no increase from what we were paying in 22
Okay.
to what's being proposed for 23, but there was one in 21 to 22.
right. I'm in favor of keeping a lobbyist lobbying on our behalf, so that's good.
My apologies. One other item. I did receive earlier this week if there would be any interest in a federal lobbying, and I'll bring that back to you at a subsequent. I just wanted to mention that because it is also from the same firm, but that'll come up at a later date. So sorry.
So now, for now, we're just discussing
This is
keeping
just
him
for the
as
state
he
level.
is for state
Yes,
level.
for
Got it.
state level.
Yeah, and I will say most of the communities in this area
Correct.
use them.
Yes.
And I know JR has a very good working relationship with a number of our legislators.
sorry.
Yeah, RJ. But also, they're not only doing work with our state representatives here, they're lobbying for us on projects like the Johns Pass dredging, for example, with other legislatures up there to help push this through. So they do a lot of things in Tallahassee that we don't necessarily see here. So from all I've seen, they're a good firm. I'm all for.
City manager, this is Alan, right? Alan Susky? That's who's RJ. Oh, okay.
RJ, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
RJ.
Okay, cool. Same one we've been using
Yes.
for, okay. This should be the shortest conversation we have
Sorry.
ever. The amount of money that we've gotten
Yes.
in grants from these guys is astronomical. It did start, I believe, at about $4,000, I think, when I was working here, so they deserve to raise up to 45. That's a pretty insignificant raise for the amount of money they brought to the table for us. So like I said, this should be the shortest conversation we ever have.
Anyone else?
It sounds like a great investment.
Yeah, it is. It is. Is there any public comment on this? Next is City Public Fireworks Show. Mr. Gomez again.
Thank you, Mayor and Mayor and Commission. This item, we've discussed fireworks a couple of times in the last year. Really, we want to clarify and if there's what direction you would like us to proceed. We have historically had one annual public fireworks display for the 4th of July. However, last year we held two. We held one for Independence Day, which was actually held on July the 5th. And we held one earlier in the year for our 75th anniversary grouper gala. So Mr. Hatch is here, provide a little more detail, but like some direction as to whether to continue as we have, or perhaps have shorter 4th of July and a couple of others throughout the year. Jay.
Good evening. Looking at the dates, if we were to redo, not redo, if we were to do again the fireworks show for the group regatta, that would be May 6th. I believe our budget last year was 8,000 for that. And then 4th of July this year falls on a Tuesday. So I'm open to whatever date, 4th of July probably makes the most sense.
It's a Tuesday.
Yeah, on Tuesday. So we're already gonna be here working, or we would have the day off. It's kind of weird in the middle of the week. The only other option is if we did Monday, July 3rd, we would be here working. And we'd be, again, the only kind of party in town as far as fireworks go with that. So that's, up to you guys either way. And then the third option I was looking at is we do host the Waterfront Festival in March during spring break with the Rotary. Our preliminary discussions, we've been looking at March 17th, which is a Friday night, to do fireworks in coordination with that, just as another driver to get folks to the festival. And probably look to do that at like 9:30 in the evening after the last band wraps up. So again, we're just looking at different potential opportunities and kind of seeing what the thought is with the carnival. I think the drive as far as attendees and paying for tickets and beverage sales and that kind of stuff, I think we would recuperate the $5,000 to $6,000 we would look to put into the fireworks show for that. Something quick and nice off the pier like the group regatta. Same thing with the group regatta between sponsorships and sales and stuff with tickets and everything else. It's kind of an offsetting thing. So it wouldn't be a huge adjustment to the budget. And then, of course, 4th of July. I know we've been traditionally historically happy with the fireworks show that we've gotten from the company we've used. But either way, if we did these 3 dates, and if there's a 4th date or whatever that you guys might have in mind, we can always look at that as well. It'd just be easier for us to just bid them all out and get them all quick and done with.
Can you say that third edition that you were talking about?
The Spring Break Waterfront Festival. So it's a 4-day with the Gulf Beaches Rotary. It's a Thursday through Sunday. They do carnival rides and live music and all sorts of
Okay,
stuff
and
out here.
so the budget we have would we just make it a little bit shorter each one so that we could do 3? Is that what we would do to keep it in our budget, or would we?
We could. I think from the Waterfront Festival, if I do 5,000, I think the return that we get from that event would increase. Because we split all proceeds on that event 50-50 with the Rotary. They donate to the rec center, and then their 50% they donate to other causes throughout the area. So I think we'd cover that 5,000. I wouldn't necessarily want to pull that from
Okay.
the fireworks
So it's gonna-
budget.
It pay for itself then.
That's the goal. Yes.
Because since you're asked for a 4th, I wonder if there's any interest in the board, or if anybody's heard about New Year's Eve, maybe having that on a New Year's Eve as well, since that's a popular fireworks event.
And I believe only Treasure Island and Clearwater held fireworks displays or shows on New Year's Eve.
And I think St. Petersburg does.
And I'm
Yeah.
sorry, yeah, I was referring to the coast.
Yeah.
But you're right, St. Petersburg also.
Well, I'll tell you, the show that was put on during the group regatta was really as good a show as I've seen.
Agreed.
And I know it was a lot less money, and I'm fine personally with those shows. And I would rather see us do the smaller shows like we had at the group regatta and split it up and be able to split that money up during the year and have more of them. I'm just one person up here. I don't know how y'all feel about it, but that was a heck of a show.
So is the discussion to move it off of July 4th and maintain the $30,000 budget, but just either shorten? I'm not sure exactly what's being presented. I know at one point it was talked about moving it off the 4th and getting 2 or 3 events for that same budget. But now I'm hearing it just shorten July 4th and have multiple events to stay within that budget. I'm not quite sure what.
So one of the benefits that we learned from the group regatta event is we're launching off the pier. It's just at the end of the property here, so it gives us a much smaller radius. But the type of fireworks they have to use for that smaller radius have a lot more flexibility. But you saw some of the ones that fanned and did different things, and the shell smaller, but you're still looking at kind of the same size, visually explosion because of how close we are. I know that the Legion would probably appreciate moving it there too. But the school's been great with us, so that's always an option, still an option. I mean, we could shorten that show from, or not shorten, but I could go say, hey, our budget's 20,000 instead of 30,000 for 4th of July. Give us everything you've got for that at the school. And then we could take that 10,000 and either split it up or use it for a different event or whatever else. So, 4th of July has always been good here and it's always, a decent fireworks show. So I don't want to take away from any of that. I do know that, you get about 20 minutes into the fireworks show here for 4th of July and you start looking at your watch going, okay, how many times can I see the same thing? But it's still exciting. We're just trying to be a little more creative with it, spread the budget some and.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I would agree. And as nice as the fireworks shows are, there are certain residents that have dogs that just have to medicate them. So we have to be, of course, careful of that too. So. As long as we're not increasing the budget, is there we have to have we're trying to put together a plan here tonight or just kind of just.
Well, just some
Talk it out.
direction. I think that, yeah, the idea was to sort of shorten a little bit the 4th of July and then possibly
Yeah,
add.
makes sense.
So to keep it within the budget. And as Jay said, for the carnival in March, or if we had the fireworks on the 17th, which is St. Patrick's Day as well, that could be a really not increasing the budget because the cost for that show would come from the event proceeds. But the idea is to just determine if that's a direction that you'd like us, we would then issue the bid to incorporate 4th of July plus 2 or the 3 other dates. The other 3 dates being the March Carnival, the Grouper Gala, and New Year's Eve.
Makes sense.
Oh, no, thanks. First off, if we need any more money, we're gonna take it out of your budget because those are nice shirts. Look at those things. When I was the rec director, we wore T-shirts, man. What the, gosh. Anyway, couple things. Did you talk to the Rotary about maybe just netting it out? But I guarantee you they'd be up for it because if you do a fireworks display on Saturday night, you're gonna bring in triple the people that were there on a normal. Well, if it falls on St. Patrick's Day is always a little iffy. So, but Friday or Saturday night, you can bring everybody out there and I think we'd make our money back and just the split, it wouldn't even come out of the budget. I'm all for, I know a lot of people are hell bent on keeping it on 4th of July. Me, no, because there are dozens of fireworks displayed. And if you go down on our beach, you better wear a helmet because it's absolutely chaos out there. So I wouldn't be opposed to moving it off and just doing it on the weekend before or keeping it on the Monday. That almost falls perfectly. If you do it on the 3rd, to me, that falls perfectly and you could probably get it at half the price because these guys will be in town. They probably have nothing to do on the 3rd and they can set up and go from there. I would love to, the gala sounds like a great event. And also we also have so many veterans organizations, whether it's the Legion, the VFW, and likewise, that if we did something, maybe the night of the Veterans Boat Parade, or just to kind of do a kind of Honor America thing, that would give us 4 different events. If we could split that money throughout there, I think that would be great. But I do agree with Ray. The number one thing I hear from people is about the dogs and the animals and the likes of that. So if they're not as robust, maybe, I mean, I don't know. I mean, we can, like you're saying, some of those, the ones that you're doing off the end of the pier are going to be just as nice, but probably not the, you know what I mean? Like the ones that, those 30,000 ones sound like mortar shells are going off and it rocks the place. But again, it's going to happen on 4th of July anyway in the surrounding communities and you get the same boom for your buck on that side. But we spend probably, you could probably tell me better than I, but 3 to 4 times more just doing it on the 4th than we do doing it on an off day. Right?
Yeah, we did get a little bit of a discount for doing it. It was like $3,000 or $4,000 off.
Off
Like
of it.
10 or 15% off,
Okay.
which is,
Okay.
Well,
and we also, and factor in, if you guys are working on the 3rd, then that's a work day and we're not paying people to be here time and a half on I mean, that's a cost savings. I mean,
Yeah.
that's not, we're not,
Well-
this is real money. So.
3,000 or 4,000 is half of another show. So even that helps. And I'm fine with the third. That's going to help with traffic and everything else out there.
Yeah, no, the deputies that appreciated that last year, having it not on the fourth. They said everything about as well as traffic flow could be for a 4th of July out here on our beach, which is already jammed with people throughout the day and into through sunset.
So do we want to look at a fourth one then on the day of the Veterans Boat Parade? I think that's a great idea, Doug. If that's something we can swing.
It's,
Yeah.
I mean, an RFP for all of these dates, it's just an extra line. So if that's what I'm looking at. And I think that the conversation with the Legion is an easy one at that point. Cause they're doing all the boat parade takes place to and from there, the party's there afterwards. So they're gonna have people there. And then for us, it's just an opportunity to do so.
Yeah, but the boat parade is in the middle of the day.
Mhm.
So
Yes.
you're going to keep boats and people around all day and then have the fireworks at night?
There will be people
I'll still
At
be
the-
there.
Yeah, they'll find their way.
Yes.
back.
Until
It's
late
fireworks
into the
are
night,
an
not to
amazing
worry.
attraction. Yeah.
Okay.
Or they'll go home and come back later.
4th
Maybe
of July,
take a nap and then come back.
on 4th of July, is there something that helps the businesses in the city? Is it like even on the 2nd, is that a better day for getting people in town than the Monday? Or is there
That's a good question. I know the hotels will be busy anyway. Their rates are almost triple those nights. So we can talk to them and kind of see. And as far as the residents with animals and nearby folks, we can up our communication game with that. That's easy with, flyering or, all the other stuff we have. So. But yeah, I'll definitely reach out to the business, see what their feeling
Can
is.
we do a 4th of July off the dock?
Yeah,
Is that
it would just be,
too-
I mean, it would be, yeah. I just have to see the amount of, because they use what they're called cakes. And
Okay,
it's just a box that has a bunch of tubes in it and they point in all different directions and different sizes. They're just, which gives it more versatility. So it's actually easier for them to load that in.
okay.
Yeah.
But even just because it's always been an annual event,
Mhm.
we still want you to try to find a barge.
Oh, yeah.
for the-
If, I don't know if you've ridden across the Franklin Bridge lately. That's where all the barges are, and you will never get a barge out here.
Barge City,
Our cheapest quote last year was 65 grand. So,
just for the
I
barge.
know, I'm
Yeah.
teasing.
yeah, I know.
Dave said he would pay for a barge.
There you go. There you go.
All right, so I'll look at these 4 for an RFP and then is that what you guys are thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I've got no problem with the smaller one like we had at the grouper gala for the 4th. I mean, it's right there across from the Legion also. I mean, potentially I could see us doing all of them right down here.
Okay.
That's, I mean, if you want to get it quoted both ways, and then we can take a look at it, but.
When you order it, can you have more lighting events versus the sound?
I can ask that. I can have that discussion. That's easier. Cause there's, yes, they have specific names. There's flash ones. There's, I'm not an expert, but I've got all my digits. That's why. But, they've got them all listed and I can specify that.
Yeah, those concussion ones, they could just
Yeah, exactly. There you go.
leave out.
See? Okay.
And is it,
As far as I
and
know.
just one last thought, is it more of a give back to the community? Or are you trying to use it as an attraction for other events where there's actually?
It's a little bit of both. I know that anytime we have, fireworks, I mean, there was people that showed up to the group gala just for fireworks, they were excited for that. And there's people that don't want to see them and they don't show up for it, but, I know that's a big draw for a lot of stuff. So.
Yeah, good.
Just one last thing. I wanted to answer Dave's question. From a business perspective, we hate when the 4th of July falls on a weekend because we're losing a July weekend in the summer. We have it, whether there's fireworks or anything. We have no problem putting fannies in the seats on the 4th of July, no matter what day it falls on. So if we were to throw it on another day, I bet you the businesses would be more excited because just another day that people will definitely be in town to watch the fireworks. And people will watch during the 4th of July week, they will watch fireworks every night. We put them out there, they'll sit on the beach. They don't even care if they're right underneath them. They'll see them from the distance and because they're on the beach until probably well after midnight. Chuck's laughing, but yeah, we were there. I've walked down there before and it's just, wow. Yeah. It's,
I've got
it's a
shirts with
sight to
holes.
see. If you've never walked down the beach at around 9:30 on 4th of July, number one, bring a football helmet. Number two, just be careful because there's people almost shooting each other. It's crazy, but it's heck of a show.
I would venture to say if we do that on the 3rd, which is a Monday, you're going to have a lot of people that are making that just a really long weekend and they're going to take one day off and by the weekend and the 3rd and the 4th all together. So
Okay.
it probably would be good for businesses.
Ready. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Jay.
Thank you. Any public comment? Okay, next is request for qualifications, continuing engineering consultant and urban design services. Director Wepfer.
So Mayor and Commission, I'll begin briefly. We are ready to essentially begin this process to issue an RFQ for engineers of record. Just wanted to provide a sample of the RFQ, and I think you've seen this in the past, well, perhaps not the two newer commissioners, but we utilize the engineers of record for a variety of different services, but primarily for project management, project overview, specifically public works and stormwater related projects, as well as any city kind of created a project that might not necessarily something we do every year, kind of like the beach groans or the dredging. But it's a variety of different types of project management. The other side of it is really the community development, urban design planning, land use. So to review those permits and those projects that we receive that do require the review by an engineering firm. Up on the screen, and it's in your packet, some more specific details of the different areas that we an engineer of record would incorporate, everything from managing actual road projects and the milling, the resurfacing, water quality, stormwater, inspecting, surveying, looking at a variety of GIS type activity, geographic information systems processes. So, and also pretty much the majority of what we're using in addition for regular permits, but for roadways and again, when we mill and resurface streets. So, and then possibly even for some utilities, we do, again, related to our stormwater, we have one pump station that we need to that we maintain. So it's just wanted to provide this and just what other input to obtain some input from all of you as to how we're going to proceed with this process here over the next probably 6 or 7 months to issue this and then bring back firms, and hopefully we get multiple firms that reply. So Megan.
Nothing to add. Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Robin, that was great.
So that's really kind of the purpose of this, and it incorporates again a variety from traffic to utilities to just anything related to our infrastructure that we do not currently house internally. And again, it is difficult to have, because we're a small city. If we were to have an in-house engineer, it would be very difficult because of the complexity of the work that we do. So really to have a firm allows for a greater diversity of, they have different engineers, different staff to review different components, that having just one city engineer, they may specialize in mechanical or civil or electrical, and gives us greater flexibility utilizing engineers of record.
Yeah, I get that. Sort of like not having an attorney that works out of his trunk.
Yes.
So,
That's not.
no, I know, I know,
It's not Tom.
I know.
It's not Trask.
That is
Daniel.
not, that
And-
absolutely is not.
And also, Mayor, and Commission, we've had, with this process, we currently have 3 engineers of record. Actually,
No,
more.
there was a separate RFQ that was sent out in 2019, 2020. I think it was 2020. And there was multiple engineers signed on for disciplines, but the difference between the 2 RFQs is this one with the FEMA mitigation and the planning and zoning. When this was sent out in 2018, it was actually sent out by the planning and zoning director. Public Works just use it as a project base.
Yeah, I think this is something we desperately need to do. I think we just need a change on our engineering services, and I won't go into why I feel that way, but I think it's time to do that. And in fact, I think I saw an extension of engineering services.
This is a lengthy
Which is the.
timeline.
Yeah.
Yeah,
which is the
just to
next-
cover us until.
But,
yeah,
yeah,
until, I'm sorry to interrupt. Yeah, as Megan said, the next item on the agenda is a discussion
Right.
just to keep the continuity until such time as we bring this back to the commission.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, Mayor.
no, I just don't want to sign another 1-year contract. We can, whether we do it on a month to month, as we did with the previous city manager until we get another firm in here. However we do it, I don't want to lock us into another year with the present engineering firm. So I think I don't like the way the city's been treated on some things. So I'll just leave it at that.
Is it my understanding this RFQ would allow you to bring in at least 2 different firms to be able to
We can bring
choose
in
with
as
either?
many as we like.
as many as you
Yes,
like?
there is no,
Yeah,
there's no
limit.
maximum.
Okay. What is the annual budget for these services?
That multiple different departments have professional engineering services budgeted, so it's not just out of one.
Do you have a feel for overall?
I do not know what the
It-
planning and zoning budget looks like.
Right, I think theirs is about 300,000 for the planning and zoning, for the community development side, which is planning, zoning, land use. However, when we have which we have had projects,
Mhm.
that typically the budget is usually about 600 to 700,000
Yeah.
for everything because of projects, but that can go up or down based on the number and the amount and the cost of projects. So when the roadway improvements on Crystal Island, the budget was much higher.
Right.
And I know there were some concerns regarding that, but
But excluding that major project, it's typically in the 300
it's
range.
for everything about about 500,000 when we had the planning, the community development and the public works.
Well, what I had a problem with, particularly with the Crystal Isle project, was well, we're paying that engineering firm another $200,000 to manage it. And then I went over billing where we were getting charged anywhere from $125 to $250 for an email or a phone call. And it just went on and on and on. And I had a real problem with that because I felt like the city was being double billed. So that's something I want to see us get away from. There's no sense in us paying to have a project manager and then paying on top of that.
For a correction, I believe what you received and partial was skewed because there are a lot of FEMA houses on Crystal Island. And with those FEMA houses, they have to document everything. They have to document phone calls, they have to document emails, and all of that is reimbursable. So it may have been lumped into that billing that you received because I don't think it was reviewed by any of the department heads before it was sent over. So I think it was skewed, but we are not being on these projects, and I can assure you 100% now, for any of the projects that I'm overseeing, we are not being billed for phone calls, emails. That's not how it works.
Mr. Laughlin, do you know whether or not we were reimbursed by FEMA for those charges? Because you remember me having you pull those numbers up.
I can check on that.
Please get back with me.
Okay, if we end
Does-
up going with another firm, do we have the ability to, for the transitional period, bring in Al for his views? He knows more about a lot of stuffs in the city than probably anybody than you. So the idea is whatever we do, we want to do it right in the best way we can. So if we go with somebody else, do they have an hourly rate that if we feel like there may be an issue or something that we can go with, Doolin Associates, or just use Al for something?
Of course, there's an hourly rate, but Al's company can still qualify to be a contractor for the city through this RFQ process.
Right.
We're not specifically picking one engineering firm because they have to specifically meet the criteria that we're looking for, especially for the planning and zoning department. There's specific requirements that they have to meet in order to be signed on to this RFQ.
Okay, and then you still have your own vote, basically. what
Of
you
course.
went-
Yeah, we'll do a review process
Okay.
of all the applicants.
Now, any large projects, I'll cite the Crystal Island project, similar to that. You have the ability to go out specifically for an RFQ for that large project and not a time and material type of,
Of course, we can always do that.
yeah. I just want to bring it up.
If we have contractors or engineers on record, it makes the process, which is already a very slow process, go a little bit quicker.
Yeah, but it's always nice to have a lump sum. I'm sorry.
Right. No, you're
Yeah.
good. Yeah. Good evening.
Good evening.
If I'm reading this correctly, so this RFQ is basically going to be, just to kind of lump it in a lump shell, is going to be sort of along the lines of what we did 3 years ago when we
Correct.
did the approved vendor list, right? So we had people that, electricians, we had this and this and this, so we could pick and choose the services that we wanted to use with each one as long as they're on the approved vendor list. So is
Yes,
that kind of what you're doing
along
here?
those lines.
Okay, so it's kind of in the
Yeah.
same vein, right?
So we'll have disciplines that they are, specialize in.
And as far as I know, that systems work pretty good.
It's fantastic.
Right, because I mean, we're not going out and doing an RFQ or an RFP for everything
Right.
and then having to go through qualifications. We already know the qualifications are in place.
Right.
And I'm sure you probably update them every year to make sure they're staying in place. And if somebody doesn't do their job, you kick them off the list.
That is
Fair enough.
correct.
It sounds like a good plan.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. I'm just gonna stand right here.
Okay.
Any,
I have no more questions. I've put in my more than 2 cents worth. Is there any public comment on this? How did I know?
Most definitely. Chuck Dillon, 529 Lillian. Is there any way of finding out how much we did spend on engineering here last year without the Crystal Island project? And it seems like to me, we got $300,000 worth of engineering. Why can't we have an engineer? We have an in-house engineer that can do most of these things and do building permits, dock permits, disposal things that they do on a 5-day basis, rather than Al was here 2 days a week, and we're so far behind with permits. And I think the permits have to be approved by an engineering person, or at least looked at that way. So I don't understand how much an engineer can cost us as a city for a year's salary, and also have these others as a backup, like somebody that can do bridges and all the fine tuning things, but engineers that can do what we need right now and basically permits and different things of that sort, and is knowledgeable about road projects. And John, you and I have talked, and I'm generally speaking, there is a amount that is supposed to be done. And I was a proponent of having Dual and Associates oversee that project, because generally speaking, if you have people that are in line with it, they're familiar with it, so you don't have a holdup on this stuff. But doing extra billing and that, I'm sorry, I never saw any of that, but I completely disagree with that when they're potentially double dipping. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, next is the extension of engineering services contract. Yes, ma'am. And Mr. Gomez.
Good evening again.
Go ahead.
So Mayor and Commission, this item, as I mentioned briefly, for continuity and to complete existing projects, we have an engineer of record again. Well, now I think it's called Sepsis, I believe, is for Dual and Associates.
TransUnion.
To continuity of the projects that have started, we are requesting, or we will be requesting, to extend that so that we can have continuity until such time as we're looking to issue the RFQ by early February at the latest, but that will take a few months to complete that. So in the interim, we would like to continue to use the engineer of record that we have been using for projects. That it was a 3-year agreement with 2 1-year extensions. And so the 3-year, we did not do the 1-year extension that when we should have at the end of last year. And that's what we will be bringing again. And as Mayor said, I'm not sure if it can be month to month. The agreement is a 3-year agreement with a 1-year extension. However, once we issue the RFQ, bring that back, bring to you, these are all the engineers of record. Once that is approved, we can utilize anybody that's on that list. We do not have to continue with the existing one. So that's why this item is being presented at this time, that we would bring back at the February 8th meeting for approval. So just to explain down to Megan, if there's anything else to add to that.
Just to touch on the projects that we have ongoing that their company is, and that's the beach groins. And I have 2 roadway projects that are near the bidding process, which, as we know, is at least a 3-month process. And then I have multiple projects that they've already started working with Pinellas County, because they are actually an engineer of record for Pinellas County as well, to start those roadway projects.
So where do we stand on the beach growing project?
We are waiting on permitting.
Do you have any idea?
Well,
Time-wise,
FEP was given we gave them a 30-day extension to reply with any comments or concerns that they had. They are near that 30-day extension, and we have not had any response yet. And that was due to doing the project during nesting season. They're concerned about that.
Can we touch base with them like tomorrow
Of course.
and see where they stand because of the time restraints, because of turtle season?
We're not going to make it before turtle season.
So now it looks like we'll be pushed off until.
Not necessarily. We may be able to work during turtle season if they allow us, which that's why we're coordinating with them and Clearwater Marine Aquarium.
And make it anything with the Corps.
We haven't heard anything from the Corps either.
So what I did find out from in an item, when we get to the dredging item at the end of the meeting, there is quite a bit of a delay at the Corps. I know that, and I don't know if there's anything that can be done, but I will be reaching out to Representative Cheney, probably to the governor's office, and to obviously to our senator's office to figure out, but the Army Corps is its own entity that is, when I was in Georgia, it was the pecking order was the Georgia Department of Transportation, the Georgia legislature, and then the governor's office, and then everyone else. It seems that the pecking order regarding coastal projects is the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers.
Yeah.
And then everybody else beneath them. So we are, and the dredging project has been, and I'll explain what has occurred, but similar with the beach growings and there isn't as much of a marine or aquatic or subaquatic vegetation, as I will explain with the dredging involving the growings as there is with the dredging, that further lengthens that process. But just to advise you that we're working with the Corps. They recently did hire 5 staff in the Tampa office to get these projects moving. And I'll update a little bit more during the dredging, but that's also part of all of this. And we wish we could move faster, but it's unfortunately the status.
But it's also Pinellas County is backlogged on their permitting and also FDEP. So unfortunately, processes that used to take a month or 2 are now taking
taking
anywhere from 3 to 5 months. And I mean, you can talk to any dock builder in Pinellas County and they're all facing the same battles. I just sent an email asking for an update.
Okay.
So we'll have an update as soon as I hear.
So this item is just to get our consensus on whether or not you want to continue the current
Well,
engineering
we want to just,
until we issue the RFQ. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, that seems logical to me.
No.
But again, the agreement, the first 3 years did expire. And I'll take, obviously it's my responsibility that did not come before you sooner so that we had the additional year. But that's what we will, again, be bringing back on the 8th.
So the proposal is to extend those rates basically and to be able to use Dolan Associates or Trans Systems Corporation consultants.
Yep.
Until the new RFQ, and I would assume they will participate in the RFQ, which would nullify this anyway.
Well, not nullify, but
No.
we then enter into
A different
a different
contract.
agreement with those engineers of
But
record.
regardless, you have a 30-day clause here.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yes.
okay.
So are we going to continue just as we are without a contract? Or are you saying we need to sign an annual contract,
We're
a
asking. to
1-year
see-
extension?
Oh,
We're
one-year
asking for the
extension.
1-year extension because we need to be doing that. Otherwise, then we would not be able to continue with some of these projects. They would come to a pretty much a halt until we got engineers of records through the RFQ process.
Sort of like the Healy
Yes,
contract.
sort of.
You have
That
to-
would also halt all permitting downstairs that would need to be reviewed because that's who is reviewing permitting right now.
I just don't understand how we got this late on moving with this. Because I know this has been discussed for a long time.
That is correct.
I don't see any numbers on this. Or do we pay them or we just pay them by project? So it's a kind of an à la carte thing with them or?
No,
There's a
there's
rate
probably an
schedule.
hourly rate schedule in the original.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's
so
not
it
in,
doesn't
it's
have
not
the-
in this memo,
Yeah,
though, right?
there's
Okay.
and that wouldn't change. It's per the original agreement. What's in there is what the rates will continue to be.
Okay.
Well, I gotta say, I'm disappointed that this is drug out to where we're in this position. Should have been done before this. Okay, thank you.
I'm okay with extending this one. I think we can do anything else. But at the same time, if we need somebody more in the building department for the permits, do we put that into the contract or another? He's here another day or something like that? Do we need to do something a little bit different?
Well, it's not on the building side. It's been on the community development, the planning and zoning,
Okay,
land use side, which we are, we will begin utilizing the Forward Pinellas for planning and zoning assistance, and you will receive an update Monday as to where we are. Unfortunately, Ms. Portal will not be returning as Community Development Director, so I will have an announcement on Monday, and then we will be back to full staff hopefully within a month in that area. So that has been where some of the backlog has been due to being short one person. Ms. Rowan went on maternity leave and Ms. Portal's absence, but we will be back closer to the full staff within a month. So, and again, I will bring an announcement on Monday to all of you as to where exactly we are.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Megan.
Thank you.
Is there any public comment on this? Thank you, Dylan. Next is stormwater station generator replacement located at 14101 North Bay Shore Drive. See, you need that bar stool up there. You can just stay
That
there.
would be very nice. Thank you. Good evening again. So as you are all aware, we have a stormwater station located at the address at 14101 North Bay Shore. The city did a rehab of that in 2007, where they installed new pumps and a panel and then a generator. That generator is near the end of its life. It sits directly on the salt water. I have spoken to a few different contractors who suggested that we switch over to natural gas, which doesn't have the fuel tank, which is the component that is rusting out the most. So what I have before you today is the approval to move forward with the purchase of that generator, which is on a source well contract, which is we've purchased off of that contract, sort of like the Florida Sheriff's Association. I will have Tico running a natural gas line from Gulf Boulevard to the stormwater station, which could be really good for the residents that live nearby because it'll cost them a lot less to connect if they choose. And I have any questions if you have them. No?
I think it's something that needs to be done.
Yes, sir.
Good.
We're going to try to repurpose that generator as well because it has a lot of low hours. So we have a plan for that as well.
What might that plan be?
Put it at the marina. The marina doesn't have a generator, so we would just need to use the fuel tank, purchase a new fuel tank. We already have the transfer switches over there, build a stand for it and permanently hook it in.
Any questions?
No questions. I'm fine with this.
Is there any public comment on this?
Once again, why do we own that one and none of the others? I mean, or why, they're all over the city. And
This is not a question and answer.
no,
This is a
okay, no,
comment.
but it's just like, so how is it that one that we're responsible for? Can we get rid of this and give it over to the sewer district? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next is sanitation solid waste, chapter 54 ordinance proposed changes.
So again, Mayor and Commission, this item is to again, obtain some of your feedback regarding some proposed changes we would like to make as we, within the next couple of months, roll out the new garbage containers, the 64-gallon toters there will be a little bit more of an automated process for them to be dumped into the back of our sanitation trucks. In preparation for that, we've looked through our code of ordinances and are proposing a few changes. I think the main one to specify that we are able to, or the requirement that everyone would have to bring their trash. You would not be able to leave your trash cans out at the curb in perpetuity. There would be a time period, a day and a time specific for when you can put them out at the curb for pickup, and then when you must retrieve them. We have currently proposed 7 PM. But I think that's not set, but, because I've heard that, well, right now it's dark at 7 PM. So, perhaps a little bit, earlier where folks will be able to put essentially you'd be able to put your trash can out no earlier, let's just say for 5:30 PM the day before your collection. So your collection is Monday, then Sunday you could put it out 5:30 PM or later, but not before.
I wonder if we shouldn't use sunset as a time.
We could use sunset as well, which varies from 5:30 to 8:40 throughout the year. So that also works. Sunset the day before the collection. And then you must remove it away from the curb and store it by sunset the day of the collection. But just to clarify in the ordinance, the placement and the removal of the container. Additionally, the other main change is to I think eliminate the fact that you can have an outdoor storage curbside. And I don't, Megan, you can clarify that a little bit. Our code does allow currently for the ability for you to have some sort of either you build it where you can store them that are some properties that are near the street. And we would be no longer allowing that, but you would have to store your can somewhere away from the curb where it's not visible.
That's, concealed.
Yeah,
I mean,
concealed.
because, a lot of houses where they don't have a privacy gate along the side of their house, you can look down the side of their house and see a line of garbage cans still sitting there. And I don't know if we can regulate concealment.
Yes, you can.
Can, yeah.
Absolutely.
We definitely can.
For me, I think that'd be, a good way to clean the city up is simply not only take them in, because some people take them back up to the front of the house and they sit in the front of their house till the next week. So I'm wondering if we couldn't add must be concealed.
I don't see why not.
Yes.
Just my thought. I don't know how the rest of the
I'm
commission.
good with that
feels.
concealment change. And my street in particular, that would clean things up a lot. What I was discussing with Mr. Gomez about this earlier was the 7 PM is the earliest you could put them out. I can just see people complaining, but it's already, I means I can't put it out before dark. And I think your suggestion of sunset is, it effectually impacts that. But I think if we just said 5:30, because this year the sun didn't set before 5:30. Every sunset 5:30, I think it was 5:32 was the latest or something like that. So if we made it 5:30, then nobody could be confused. You got to get it out. You can't put it out, before that time. So at least they still have some daylight to put their can out. But other than that, this is fine.
Or an hour before sunset.
That's because there
Doesn't
are
matter
people
to
that
me.
pay attention to the letter of the law and they say, well, I want to take it out. It's
Yeah.
already dark.
Yeah.
So this way.
I think the whole purpose of that is just not to have it sitting out a day before.
Or
food out
2
there.
days after,
Yeah.
which happens often.
Often.
But having the 164-gallon container at each residence is gonna help clean up a lot of that as well. It's gonna take a little bit of time, but
Yeah.
it will help clean up the 12 garbage cans that are at one house.
Then other proposed change are simply just to clean up some of the language in some of the ordinances, for a little improved clarity, but that's what we will bring back to you.
Okay.
In the section 54-56, it says within the city are provided garbage cans and trash cans. In our fees schedule, we say we provide one and any additional ones they purchase.
Correct.
Do we need to
We can change that
word
wording in there.
here so that
Absolutely.
okay, I'm afraid somebody's gonna come
Yeah,
back.
we
at
can
us.
reference the fee schedule, so it always copies that language.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I think the idea was second a second can, if you needed it on a regular basis, you would pay an additional fee and the city would provide that and maintain it and
That is correct.
whatnot. Question is, if you needed that second can on a regular basis and they went out and purchased a similar can with exactly to fit the truck, how would that be viewed?
I think the purpose of us purchasing the cans was to clean up the city, to make it to where it looks cleaner. We're able to maintain the cans. Because currently, if you drive around the city, there's maybe a third of them that have a lid or have a wheel, or they might be cracked. There's no telling, but we don't want to get into a situation where we're now allowing residents to purchase their own cans, because then we're just gonna be in the same situation we're currently in.
Oh, we discussed, you know, a one-off here and there, and that's fine.
Right, absolutely. If they're
But
gonna
if it's
set
a-
one out for,
But if it's a regular thing, I'm just,
they'll have to purchase one from us.
it may be, you may want to state it, that's all.
Yeah, of course, we can make that clear.
Okay.
We did receive part of our order today, and the rest is coming in tomorrow.
Ooh, great. Got it. Okay, all good. All right, is there any public comment on this? Okay, next is discussion of possible certain residential amenities, rental prohibitions. Mr.
Mayor,
Gomez.
Thank you, Mayor. This item is, again, to obtain some feedback, a discussion regarding the possibility of adopting an ordinance that would essentially restrict or place certain prohibitions on certain components of primarily single-family homes, whether they could be advertised and rented out. Certain amenities such as a pool, well, technically your yard isn't necessarily an amenity, but we grouped it. But your pool, your yard, if you have a rooftop area, and those types of your patio, driveways, whether there's any interest to restrict that. We have not had any issues that we are aware of anyone renting out their pool and every week and having massive parties, et cetera, and clogging the street because 20 cars showed up and 30 people showed up at the pool, you know, other than a regular kind of non-recurring event. There are websites out there that do allow for you to rent out your pool, to rent out and other parts of your home. If you do have a rooftop area, you can go online and that can be rented out. So that's what we wanted to see if there's any interest in doing that. Some of the issues that those types of activities can bring are obviously congestion, traffic, taking up all the parking on a street if there's limited parking, additional trash, just in a really kind of sort of a nuisance to neighbors if that is constantly happening. When I was in Georgia, some of these were happening in certain areas and they were becoming nuisances, but it's a different area. Regulations were a little different. The city that I was in, we regulated the ability for you to rent out a room in your house. There were only certain zoning districts where that could happen. And we started to have a company that bought one property, converted it, and then the neighbors, you know, kind of pointed out to us what was going on and we realized that it was not allowed once we found out what was going on. But that's what the item is. And so wanted to get any feedback as to whether we do. Again, the main parts really being your pool, your rooftop, and pretty much patios. Again, we haven't had much of that, and I think only maybe one city in our area has adopted something similar to this. I'm not exactly sure if they did, but that's what the item is. It would not prohibit, we would not include like docks. We know that people do kind of use their docks for boats to come up. We haven't had any issues with loud parties or events. Again, I think docks aren't large enough to, well, some of them might be, but most of them are not. You just have a boat come up and then they dock and then kind of go on their way. Whereas these others can, again, if you wanted to list your amenity, you could do that online and then have rentals going in and out of it.
I think it would probably be good to have an ordinance in place before we have a problem than waiting till we do have a problem to start talking about it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's a good plan.
Yeah, since
I
there was a line drawn in the sand on the RV, or the rental, short-term rentals,
Right.
and we were lucky enough to be ahead of that. Let's be ahead on this one too.
Okay,
And there's no guarantee that we will be preempted. Was thinking of whether to mention that or not, but that's the future will determine whether we may or may not, but I like the entrepreneurship kind of idea behind it, but it in residential neighborhoods, I think it just will create too many issues.
right. Okay, I'm good with moving forward with it. Is there any public comment on this? Okay, next is update on John's Pass dredging. I know we kind of covered this, Megan, but you got some more you want to go over with us?
I'll go over it, Mayor
Okay.
and Commission. It's been, as I'd mentioned earlier, we are going through the permitting process, which we will stay on the issue for this is more the Army Corps. This and the dredging involves obviously a sizable and important waterway, which is a federal waterway, the middle of the Johns Pass Channel from the point where you're approaching the bridge on the west side, going under the bridge and into Boca Ciega Bay. That is a federal waterway. I was advised by the Army Corps that the dredging of that waterway has been funded by Congress. And although there is no timetable, at some point, I'm guessing in the next 2 to 4 years, the federal waterway west of the bridge will be dredged by the Army Corps. The Army Corps only dredges their waterway. So I asked several times, that's how it works. Because that is happening, this process will be lengthened in terms of the review by the Army Corps, because it's your navigation, your Marine staff at the Corps, additional staff that review any dredging that is not Army Corps dredging. When we had the most recent meeting a little over a week ago, they were very pleased with the information that was provided. We began utilizing Aptim, which is the contractor that Pinellas County uses for coastal management. Aptim also did the surveying after the USF report to determine, what sedimentation is in the area to be potential area to be dredged, and whether that could be repurposed on other Pinellas County beaches, whether ours or somewhere else. And so Aptim has been very, very extremely helpful. There's an item included with this agenda item to approve utilizing Aptim, piggybacking with the Pinellas County contract to use them to continue through the permitting and the construction, the bidding and the construction and the entire project. There's a variety of other items that both the Florida Department of Environmental Protection and the Army Corps had or commented on, and one of the main ones is called the subaquatic vegetation. So anytime there is any type of dredging, you have to be cognizant of whether you're going to do it during turtle season or not. Even though this is not on the actual beach, there's still things that you have to do to prepare. And also the seagrass components. I don't know if you may be aware, there are 2 seagrass areas on the south side of the waterway. So essentially close on the Treasure Island side, about 150 meters from the southeasternmost point of the dredging area. I guess I could point out on the map on the screen. So close to this point, about 150 meters across the pass, there is seagrass. So part of this process is that we have to survey that seagrass to make sure that it meets NOAA's criteria so that it is protected. The mayor, you and I were this morning at the Big C meeting, the presentation from Tampa Bay Watch, where the presentation included a few slides on the importance of seagrass. Seagrass helps keep our waterways cleaner. It helps both estuaries or any waterway. So I better understood after that meeting the reason why the Corps and its related agencies such as NOAA, U.S. Fisheries, and a couple more are part of the whole process to ensure that subaquatic vegetation and marine life are not harmed or damaged by the dredging. So all of that, we are again in the process. There's some details on here about the processes and a little bit of the schedule, the time period, but we're estimating that we're approximately about 120 days through the permitting process, about 30 to 60 days, well, anywhere from 30 to 90 days for the bidding. The actual dredging is expected to be about 30 days maximum, no more than that. So that's the smallest time frame. And then the follow-up after that is just under 30 days to do that. So we're looking at having this process completed by the end of this calendar year, but there is no guarantee. The Grand Canal dredging south of us has been under permitting for 14 months now within the Army Corps. The Army Corps did tell us it should not be that long. They stated 120-day period, but that's where we are with the process. We did complete all the paperwork, the requirements for the grant, the appropriation that we received from the state. And that is also listed in here, both that grant approval document and the piggybacking with Aptim, the county contractors. We need to have the commission approve that, or I would feel more comfortable doing that. And that would happen. We would bring that back at the February 8th meeting to approve both of those. They're all moving along. The county contract, the Aptim, the contract with the county does expire in March, but the county commission should be renewing that agreement to allow them to continue as the coastal management contractor for another 5 years. And then the one other item of importance is the Corps will either provide one of two approvals to allow for the dredging, and that'll be determined once they go through the really in great depth of the process. It'll either allow for a 5-year or a 10-year permit. If it's a longer permit period to do it, that doesn't mean that we're gonna wait to do it, obviously, because we need to do this the sooner the better. But it will allow for the future maintenance, not having to go back through this process again. So if in 3 years, if we get it dredged by November or December 23, if it needs to be done in 26 or 27, we would not have to go through this process again. But they will advise as to how that will end up.
I'm just curious, are they aware that northern shoal is a navigational hazard?
Yes.
I would say that had a lot to do with that sailboat coming ashore, though I'm not positive, but.
We explained all of it, where we are at when I spoke with our Aptim representatives was to provide some of the video showing the actual water movements. Cause I mean, I've taken probably at least an hour's worth of well, probably 2 hours worth of just the movements. Fortunately, just about everybody on our call with the Corps is familiar with the area and the actual waterway and a lot of the subaquatic vegetation components. So they were fairly comfortable that there really wouldn't be any issues with actually issuing the permit. That shouldn't be a problem. It's really theirs. Not that there's a backlog, but just their process to be able to go through everything in this time period. Again, a little bit more complicated than the beach groins.
Okay. And was there any discussion on where that sand will go? I mean, I would like to see us harden our beach with it, build that dune back up.
That's
that we
our,
lost.
priority. Once part of once the permit is approved, per what we were told, there would be another, sort of testing of the sedimentation. I think we go down 10 or Aptum will go down 10 feet. So a geological type survey to determine what is still underneath, what's in that sedimentation, and to determine if it can be placed on any beach to where it does not harm any marine life. So marine or, well, I'm calling it marine, but also birds. Because there are if you do place sand on anywhere on a beach and you have to make sure that it doesn't kill any of the marine life, even the little shelled, because the birds feed on that. The coquina. So if you kill all the coquinas by putting sand that doesn't allow them to live, then the birds may begin to die off. So
Yeah,
Just to
but I'm
make sure.
talking about high enough up that we're basically building a dune
Correct,
with
yeah,
it,
more
not
dunes.
down at the water line. Because if we
Correct.
put it at the water line, it's just going.
yeah, no, it's not gonna
Coming
be,
right
no, it
back
would
in
be
the
high
forest.
up, but the possibility of it washing back out. And that's what they comment. My response was, we don't believe it will because we have the groins that tend to have kept the sand up as opposed to washing it back out into the Gulf. But at least they were familiar with that and they agreed. They're like, well, yeah, you're right. I don't think it would. If you place sand up near the dunes, it's not gonna go back out into the Gulf.
Okay,
But I will keep, certainly updated with the progress right about every other week to see where we are when I provide an update every week as to the status and where we are in regards to the permitting of it.
Okay.
Happy to answer any questions you might have.
good.
You said the Army Corps of Engineering is going to dredge their part of the waterway, the center to the west in a year?
They did not give us a timeline. They did not know, they had no schedule. But knowing how some of the federal processes work, I can't imagine that they would not complete that within at least the next 3 years. But it did not, no inclination that it would happen in 23 or 24. It sounded like towards the latter part of 25 or 26, because we did ask and the answer was, we just don't know. But again, usually those are done within a 3-year period. It just depends.
So, Mr. Mayor, when you were talking about the shoal, are you talking about the shoal to the north of the first green can?
To the west of the jetty, straight out.
Okay. Yeah,
That
yeah, same
actually,
area.
there's actually, at low tide, a visible sandbar out there now. So it just keeps getting worse and worse. And any boater that's been here a number of years knows that that channel has actually shifted to the south because that sand is built up so bad there. And we keep yelling, but it's like nobody's listening.
And one other thing, as I look at the image up on the screen, we also obviously need to get a right away from DOT. They have stated that shouldn't be an issue, but that's what they're also working to obtain. Because we're gonna, part of the dredging will be underneath the bridge. And so that's the Florida Department of Transportation right away.
Now that engineering work from the company that will be doing the core sampling and whatnot, is the county funding that?
No, that's part of it can be, because I did come up in a discussion as to whether the county would fund that. So I am gonna meet with Mr. Burton to go over what they may provide. But, and again, relating to the fact that we have not received any renourishment funding.
Brighton, well, that was our argument all along on trying to work with them before. So, okay, thank you. I guess that has got it. So is there any public comment on this? Thanks, Chuck. Having no more business, this meeting is adjourned at 7:44 PM.